I'm sleepy, so you guys might need to wake me up.
I smelled something out there.
What was it?
Someone had put something in their and then didn't come back for it.
Oh, so it's burnt up or something?
Yes, the security K.
Oh,
And they took it out and it was like just almost on fire charcoal.
huh. Wow.
You're right. And when they mentioned
All right. So, in no questions other than how people function in life. About activate Windows. Hopefully, it'll work for a few more days. Guys, get some security stuff, or no? All right, and then what I'll do is, so I'm going to spend no more than 30 minutes on this, and then we'll go on and talk about the next assignment stuff. So this is the security, and I'm in SQL Server, not MySQL, because it's easier here, but I'll do a little bit of MySQL too. All right, so security in SQL Server, actually it has a much more sophisticated security setup than MySQL. You notice that every database, let's open a database, has, let's just do community assist, it has a security folder, right? Security folder, there are things like you can set up users and roles. I'm not going to talk so much about schemas. You can do, if you're doing encryption, you can do asymmetric keys and symmetric keys, and you can do certificates. You can set up some audits for the security system. Mostly I'm just going to focus on users and roles stuff. At the other level, notice that there's another security folder out here. This is level. And when you open that, you'll see that there are logins, there are roles at the level of servers, and you also have credentials and cryptographic, which means basically your encryption providers. And there's some audits that you can set there. So this is the server level, and this is the database level. So there's always two security levels. Server always goes from a server, map a user to that login inside the database. Okay. A couple of words that would be good covering. I was looking for, I guess if I do them on the screen, they'll be there when in the video. I'm just going to open up Notepad, I guess. So a couple of keywords that are really good to know when you're talking about security. There's authentication, and then there's authorization. What's authentication? Anybody? Right, is the person who they say they are. There are lots of ways to do this. Say they are. The typical way is password, right? And so you have a username and a password. But it could also be, you know, a certificate. Typically, much more true of companies. It could also be, you know, a fingerprint, some kind of trick. So, yeah, permissions and rights, yeah. And you know, who's authorized to do what. Can't type. Okay. So the first part we're going to do is basically just the authorization thing. So on the server, actually, so if I go down to security, I'm going to do this graphically, although it's actually a lot easier just to do it in SQL. I'm going to right-click on logins, and I'm going to do a new login. So let's see if I can make this bigger. I didn't necessarily want it that big, but that's okay. So we have a login name. Now Windows has two kinds of authentication. It has Windows authentication and SQL Server authentication. You guys know what Windows authentication would be? Yeah, so basically one of the things you can do is you can take a Windows user and map it to a login. And that means that when you log into your machine, you're automatically logged into SQL Server with whatever permissions SQL Server gives you. Your Windows permissions aren't copied over. You have to give your separate permissions in here. I'm going to just do, what do we want for a login? I guess I could log in. Well, actually, there is a Steve there because of the login that we all have. So let's just do George. I don't know why I do George as a name a lot. I'm not sure I've ever known a George. Yeah.
Curious George.
Could be. I did watch a lot of that when my kids were little. All right, so I'm just going to do that. I'm going to make it a SQL Server login, which means that we need to provide a password, right? So we're not mapping in directly through Windows. So, and I'm going to do something that you should never, ever do for life. I'm going to uncheck those boxes. I'm not going to enforce the password policy. The password policy would make you produce a password like this or something that has non-alphanumeric characters and numbers, uppercase, lowercase, has to be of a certain length. You can also make it so that it expires at a certain time and that you have to change it at your next login. But I'm not going to do any of those, and I'm going to make my password pass. As I said, this is something you should never do. All right. So I'm going to do OK. And what that does so far is it gives me, so when I look here, there's George. I'm surprised. So we're going to have to change a couple of things too for this to work. But right now, the only thing that George can do is connect to the server. Can't do anything on the server. Can't see any databases. Can't do anything, right? One of the things that Microsoft has done in its old 2000 and prior, it got a reputation as being too prone to hacking. And the reason that it was prone to hacking is that they shipped it wide open. Everything was turned on. And it was up to the database administrators to turn things off. But what they do in the new versions is everything is turned off. Everything is given the least possible permissions. And the database administrators have to go and turn things on, which is much more secure. So George right now can't do anything. I am going to go to community, and under security I'll go to users, and I'll just right click and I'll add a new user. And I'll make the username be just here. I'll make user or user George. The login, you have to map it to a login. And the default schema, I'm just going to make it DBO. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Schemas are take a lot of explanation. I'm going to do this. I actually could have done all of this in the login, because you can make a login that maps to a database that creates a user. But I'm doing it instead to show the different pieces. So I've created a user for this database that maps to a login that exists. And in a schema, DBO means database owner. If you want, when you do these, you can do. They got little 3 here, and you can out. And there's George. So I could have got it that way rather than just type it in. So I'm going to do OK. And now under users, there's George. George user. George user still doesn't have any permissions. They can connect to the server. They can connect to the database. They can't read the tables. They can't insert, update, or delete. They can't do anything. All right. So you have to give them some permissions. The best way to give them permissions is to assign them to a role. And what a role is it's a collection of permissions. So I am going to, under here we have roles. I'm going to open that. Roles sound good. I could use a role, but that's a different. So we go down to database roles. These are built-in roles. There's an access administrator, there's a backup operator, data reader, data writer, data DDL, and then means that they can create and alter things. You can deny the data reader, you can deny data writer. There's the database owner. There's a security administration, which allows you to create users. And then there's public. Everybody is a member of public, but public has no permissions.
So you can select more than one?
You can. And you can make your own, which is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So these are kind of built-in roles for, like, if you have a data writer, you can insert, update, and delete, but you couldn't read anything. Data reader lets you read everything. The trouble with these 2 roles is that this lets you insert, update, and delete into any table. This lets you read any table. They're a little bit too general. Right? The backup operator, you can't read any of the tables, but you can back up the database. Right? A lot of these, I mean, they're just different permissions. You can combine. You can belong to multiple roles. If there is a contradiction in the permissions between roles, you always go with the most restrictive. So you can't. So you might have a group, that say they can all do this, but they can't do these things. And you might want one person that can do a little extra. You can't assign them to that role because it always goes to the most restrictive thing. If you give them more permissions in another role, too bad. If they're a member of the underlying role, that it's always the most restrictive thing that applies. Does that make sense?
Could you keep it around it by creating your own?
You can create a different role. Yeah, and it's a lot better to assign permissions to roles than to people, because you can assign permissions to people, but it's much better to assign it to a role. That way, you can just hook them to the role and unhook them. You don't have to undo permissions. You don't have to try to act. It's just the role is a permissions. You just add the person to the role with the job from the role, and all those permissions go away. Whereas if it could be a little more complicated if you do the other, and it's really hard to maintain. If you say you have thousands of users and every user has their own permission set, that's just a nightmare. And roles typically fall in. So let's say that I'm going to create a role. Let's say the George user is mostly involved with like employees, human resources. So I'm going to create a role. And it's just like everything else. You can just right-click, new, database role. And I will make it, we'll call it human resources. And I'll make it owned by DBO. You could make it, schemas is another long story, but I'm going to go into securables. And I'm going to do search. And I'm going to look for all objects of the type. And what I'm going to look for are tables. Okay. So it'll show me all these tables. So let's look at employee. And you might, let's see if I can get this. See down here, actually, let's just maximize this. you got different permissions. So this is on the table employee. You can alter it. I probably wouldn't give them that right. I'm not sure what control is, actually. But you can delete into it, insert. You can reference it. I mean, I'm not entirely sure of that one either. You can select, you can take ownership, you can update. You can view the changes, and you can view the definition of the table. Those are the permissions. I'll look up control with references. It seems like I knew what they meant at one time. Any permission that you are not explicitly granted, you don't have. Does that make sense? So I would grant them the ability to insert. And I would grant them the ability to select. And I would grant them the ability to update. I don't know that I would grant them the ability to alter or create view definition. Sure, they can see the definition of the table. There's another thing in here that's with grant. And what that means is that if you don't have permission for it, under certain circumstances, like within a stored procedure, you can be granted that temporarily. You can within do it. Deny, interestingly, is not ANSI standard for databases. You should never have to deny anything, because anything that you don't explicitly grant is denied. So there's no need for a deny. So then let's do, so I'm going to do person, and I'll do similar kinds of things here. I'll grant, I guess I will grant, I don't know if I'll grant delete, but I'll grant insert, select. I'm doing that because I'm not sure which row is row, and update. And person address, the same things. Insert, select, and update. And what else? Contact. I will allow update, select, and insert. Now, one of the things that you really should do with all of this is, before you have to figure out what these roles would be, what the permissions needed to do the job, all that kind of thing.
Why would you give contact?
Well, so contact is the way the table is split up in this, which you guys haven't done it. The person contains all of the names, emails, passwords, etc. All right. The employee has, just the employee information tied to the person table. Person address has all the addresses for the people, and contact has all the phone numbers, the different phone numbers.
I see. So you would basically tag a contact onto a user that you wanted to be able to access the contacts.
Right. So the contact, for every person, there is a list of contact numbers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The other thing that they probably would need is they probably need to be able to see employee position, and I'm just going to make it a select. Well, actually, they need to do insert.
So, like for contact, you didn't say that they could alter it. So does that mean only the creator of the database can alter the contact?
Yeah, I should actually give them permission to do that. But actually, you sort of see the pattern anyway. I may not go through all of this because it could take a while to figure out all the permissions. But this is sort of how you do the permissions. In code, in SQL, you just write grant select on employee position to, and then you name human resources role. You just assign it that way. Then the person. So let's save all of this. I think I just do OK to save it all. Cannot alter the schema ADO. Where did I say that I was going to alter it? General. So let's don't do any schemas today. So owner DBO. That's where I wanted it, not this. Okay. All right. Let's leave the owner off of there. It already exists. I'm just trying to add the permissions to it. Let me look at the role real quickly. Human resources, properties, securables. It didn't give me any of the securables. That's what I was trying to get. Well, maybe it will. Search. Okay. Tables. Okay. So let's look at donation. No, it didn't do them. Well, actually, donation would be all right. Employee. It didn't keep the. Let's just do a couple. I'm not going to do a bunch of them here. I'm just going to do some selects. Select on employee, select on person. I think that's enough for the example. Okay. Now, with George, the user, I'm going to look at the properties there, and I'm just going to add them membership, and I'm going to add them to human resources. And there's one last thing I got to do, and then I think I might be done with the security for now, and then we'll do the other. I am going to change the properties of the server. Boy, I hate those dialog boxes in this visual mode. I need to be able to allow SQL Server and Windows Authentication. So I have to restart SQL Server. Actually, there was a restart. I could have just done restart instead of this. Come on. Start. Yes. And then what I'll do is I'll log in as George, and then we'll call it good. So I'm going to leave this login here. I'm going to connect to the database engine. I'm going to change it to SQL Server Authentication, and I'll do George, and I will do pass. I'll connect. Was it pass?
Yeah, it
That's
was.
going to be capitalized.
Did I capitalize it or not? No, I did not. All right, so we have two instances here. This one has Georgia. So when I look at this, I can see all the databases, but when I go to like test, it tells me I can't access it. When I go to Community Assist and I look at tables, I can only see employee and person because they're the only ones I have any permissions on. And when I do a new query, I can select from select star from person, and I can execute. All right, but if I try to update person, set, let's say person first name equals J, the way it was originally. Whoa. Where person key equals 1, when I run that, it'll say update permission was denied because I didn't give it I did it the original time, but then it didn't save.
And
So.
that's because all it wasn't checked.
No, it's because I didn't give out. There's no update permission assigned to it. So security, and this is true in MySQL too, although it's a little bit weirder in MySQL, is mostly a matter of creating logins, users, and then setting up the permissions. Now, one of the things, like we have in person, there's all sorts of, there's a username and password. So you probably create like a generic login into the database that doesn't have very many permissions, that really only has the permissions to see the person table and pull out your own. And then what happens is you look at the, once you've validated, authenticated the person, then you might switch the role to something more specific. So there are ways to do that in the website. With the database itself, I mean, if you're building a website, you can do that. In the databases themselves, servers at the logins are at the server, and then users are at the database level. Anyway, does that give you a little hint of this? In the summer course, I actually spent a long time on the security, setting up the roles, setting up, and we do talk about the schema, and we talk about how to control, set these things up. And stored procedures are part of it too.
Is that a different class?
It is. It's the 226 database administration. All right. So what we want to do now is get started, which is another database, very different thing. Mongo is not on this. It's not on the virtual machine, but we're going to add it. So it isn't coming on. What is it giving you as an error? We could also do this on the underlying machine, but I'd have to run around to every person.
I can just follow along.
Did you see the special for today? Or
It is the error.
That's real?
Yeah.
So is it, because you have quite a different.
Did you give it the Android one?
it got some volume with it.
I guess so.
Or just wanted to use an Android?
Yeah.
It's because Andy calls class. Where is
Are you in that class?
Yeah, I am here.
Oh, that's why the Android. That's what I was.
Yeah, but the-
Yeah, there's so many great options.
Well, a lot of.
There's a lot.
So we right across from the urban outfitters and the QFC on the other side. There's a DB related. You can get.
But I just don't know.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
It's right atmosphere.
Yeah, so there's a lot of the
Yeah, the Indian place.
I wanted to do that.
No, this is the second time today. So I think that I saw.
It's really good. You kind of have to go like down in the basement. It's a little.
I studied.
It's so good to go.
But on the somebody really cool. But she really gets with that. So you can exit and then you see like dog and kind of dolls and then just like.
So yeah, I opened my VM and then it.
Oh. I've had a lot of people doing that. Do you want me? So we could do this outside of the virtual, but as I said, I'd have to run to every single machine and say, give you permission to do the install. Let me do it in the virtual first, and then if I have to, I will do it on the underline for a few people.
35%.
I'm going to go to Mongo. I'm just going to type in Mongo up there, MongoDB.
So you're doing that inside the virtual machine?
I am doing it in the virtual machine. I'm going to go to the main Mongo site. Is that where I want to go? That's not the main site. But it won't go back.
How do you click on an app?
There is a, let me go here real quickly, because I know there's an actual link here. So I'm going to do, I wish I had, so, yes. So it's congerprep.blogspot.com. And one of there's a Mongo database thing. Mongo database 2 is not 2, not 3. First steps with NoSQL. So it's congerprep.blogspot.com, and then it was the first steps with NoSQL.
If we're on their website, do we want it with or without SSL support?
We don't really need SSL. I'm going to go to this. We want the community edition, right? So if you can get here, you can click on this, and it'll take you to where you can download the community edition. And I'm just going to download it from here. We want the Windows edition. I'm going to talk a little bit about it too before we do, because it's very different. You don't have to register. When it's done running, you can, when done downloading, you can run it. Now you're up.
Yeah, and it takes so long. It took a long time to update, and now that it did that, it said working on update 0%. Don't turn off your PC. This will take a while. PC will restart several times.
I can get you. I'm going to actually download this. I'm going to just talk for a while. So, and we will have a few days. So I'm going to run it. Couple of things about Mongo that'll probably be a little bit. It's very different, and I'm going to talk about that. There's no GUI.
Yeah.
Just do a complete. Now you'll install. All right. The other thing is, I don't think you'll see any Mongo in the apps. So under M, I don't see Mongo. There's one other thing we have to do, and I'll lead you to this a couple of times, and it's in that blog. See if I go back to the blog. Oh, that's NVC. That's too far back. Let me go back. First steps of NoSQL. We have to create some folders. We need to create CData, CDataDB, and CDataLog.
Before installing.
No, after it's installed, but before running. The quickest way to do this is just to go into your file Explorer, go down to local disk C, right click, new folder. So data. And then inside the data, we need to do DB. So folder. And then we want a new folder again, which is log. And this is actually where your database files will go. And why it doesn't do that on the install, I don't know. So C-level data, and inside of that, DB and log. So it should look kind of like this. Data, data, DB, data, log.
Is it okay that you're using uppercase D?
Maybe. Should be all right for Windows. I'm not, if you were doing it in Linux, it would be definitely not okay, but I don't know. Yeah.
We'll find out.
So before, I mean, this is kind of what things look like initially, but I want to talk a little bit about what a NoSQL database is and a little bit about JSON. So the thing about NoSQL is that it's very different. It doesn't have tables as such. It has what they call collections. And the things that are stored in the collection are JSON files. Just how many of you know what a JSON file is? Nobody? It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. That being said, it's actually not an object. Here's an example of one. We have a curly braces. I is the field name or the what they call the key name. There's a colon, and then you have a value. So it's a key value pair. Title, colon, Neverwhere, author, colon, Neil Gaiman, year, colon, 2015, publisher, colon, Morrow, and then a description, colon, and then you can have your description. A couple of things is that this is, you can store data like this, and you can do it one that has additional fields or others that have fewer fields, and it doesn't complain. It's non-structured. That's good and bad, I guess. NoSQL databases are best for storing non-structured information, right? Information that doesn't really fit well into tables. So they're used a lot for like gathering social media information, right? For pulling stuff off of Facebook, storing the Facebook stuff, pulling stuff off of Twitter. The Twitter JSON, this is really simple. The Twitter JSON file is like 7 pages long. It's a bizarre thing because you have the 140, what is it, 144 characters of the actual tweet?
Yeah.
But it also, every file, when you take it from it, it has the entire user profile. It has the history of your tweets back for a certain length of time. It has like the top 100 people you're following. It has everybody that retweeted your tweet. All that information is in one gigantic JSON file, which is really good if you're trying to do, there's lots of things to query, right? So, as I said, it's a very different kind of environment. There's other things that NoSQL is better at than SQL, say SQL Server or MySQL. One, controlling gigantic amounts of information. All right, and the reason why it can store gigantic amounts of information is that the model, you can distribute it across multiple machines, even thousands of machines. Whereas with a relational database, yeah, you can put your files on different machines, but it's still, each file has to be a whole. Does that make sense?
If you change it on one database, it's not going to change it.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's basically what you need. The way you build up the relational database is you buy bigger hard drives and more RAM. That's how you expand a relational database. With this, you can just spread it across more machines. They don't even have to be particularly high-powered machines. And you can spread it across the internet. Disadvantages are, when you query, they never promise that you're going to get a 100% accurate answer. Right? It's always eventual consistency. Because if they had to, if basically what it does is just pings all these machines. If it can get the information, it gets it. If it can't, it just bypasses it and goes to another. So you're never always getting the whole picture. Does that make sense? Doesn't matter too much when you're just doing broad statistical analysis. It would be fatal if you were trying to do your accounting that way. Right, so NoSQL databases are not particularly good for business type transactions, but they're really good for handling big masses of data for statistical analysis. Does that make sense, sort of? Let's kind of go through this. Maybe it'll make it more sense. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think it's doing the big one.
Would it make sense to do that on the outside?
You could do it. Maybe.
This is always within the VM there, so I could just.
Yeah, just go get the file.
And now,
Once the file is there, so it's mongodb.com download center. I mean, if you can get to this file, you can just link to it.
the congerprep.blogspot.
Yeah, congerprep.blogspot.com.
And then you said I was going to have a permissions issue on the computer, right?
Yeah, when you install, you will. So go to First Steps with NoSQL. And yeah.
And the Windows version.
Yeah, Windows. Just don't have this to. Mongo, by the way, was recently hit with a security breach. So just run with it.
Is that not the same thing?
So what companies were affected?
That's cool.
Probably a lot. I'm not sure. That's a good question.
It's the same.
And then install it. And then it should pop up a window.
It did have a
Hit this one. Open it up.
no, I shouldn't.
Is it fine?
So it's just an installer file.
That's it. No.
Message for you do the tweet? No, I just do it like go through it twice for 2 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I just. I know, I just looked through it today and I was like, oh.
And that was just it. It's like, this machine has been a bit of a nightmare. Oh, really valuable.
It should just pop up. It should just pop up as a permission thing.
Oh, dilute.
I was reading MongoD.exec,
Yeah.
but then I was reading Mongo. Like, choose that. I'm like, oh, MongoD.
Yeah, MongoDB. MongoDB is
But the exec file was just where I was just like, run Mongo? I don't understand. Why did they? Oh wait.
Yeah.
Mongo.
Is it still stuck?
It at least give me a little blue thinking bar outside of the window, but not within it.
Well, I'll get you there. The virtual. Type CMD. Some of you on this. CMD is the command line. Weirdly, this won't work in PowerShell. I do not know why. The commands don't seem to work in PowerShell. Is that big enough to see? From the back, is that big enough to see? You need it bigger? A little bigger? Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. I think change that. So I changed the defaults. Let's try it again. CMD. Is that any better? I'm not sure it's any different. It's fine? Okay. So I will, as I said, I don't expect this to stick today. This is more an introduction, but I did a CD /. How many of you know some DOS?
Seen it in a long time.
CD / just takes you to root, and root in Windows is C. And then we need to type in the path, which there are ways to path this so you don't have to do it. It's basically program files. So we want to change CD, right? Yeah, CD. Change directory to program files. And then it's MongoD. MonGod actually makes some sense there. It's MongoDB. And then I believe it's server 3.2 bin. Is it 3.4? Well, it could be. They could have updated it. Server. And you did 3.4?
Yeah.
3.4/bin. It worked. Okay. So then to actually start the server, it's MongoD, I believe. Yeah, MongoD. You don't have to write the exec, but okay. So it's actually starting the server, and you can allow access if you want it. We're not going to approach this from outside.
Screen went totally black. Just my cursor. It's been that way for a couple of minutes now, maybe. Do with that. Oh,
There we go.
I think we might get a little. I think it already ended the task.
Okay. Close that. I think it's partially because this is running.
But I mean, if the radio was going, it was probably taken off.
Well, so this is the server running. Couple things. It's waiting for a connection. That's the end of it, right? Waiting for a connection on port. So there's no connection to it yet. So one of the things that we need to do is actually run a second command. And we need to do the same path. And this is all in that blog, right? So every step of this is in that blog. So you can, if it shouldn't be too hard to recreate once we get going. I'm going to do cd program files, MongoDB server 3.4 bin, and then this one is whereas the other was MongoD, this is just Mongo, I believe. Now you can see down here it says that it I don't know if you can see it down here. It says it received client metadata. So connection now open. So there is a connection to the server there. As painful as this may be to do this in command line, it's amazing how much of computing is going back to the command line. There's a lot of stuff here. This is, although we're doing it on Windows, this looks like Linux. All right, so we're in the database, and I'm going to just pull this up again. Once you're in here, we're connected to the test database. I'm going to switch to a database called Books, and it doesn't exist. This is a weird. Actually, this one doesn't say connected to test, but let's do use Books. And it says it switched to the database Books. Books did not exist until I said to use it, right? So it just now created the database Books. And then I'm going to add a down here it has DB book collection find. So I'm just going to do that too. So DB is the current database context, which is books, right? We created the database when we say use books. DB, I'm going to say book collection. And I'm going to do .find. Find is a method. It's a lot like select. Oh, and I need to do a semicolon. Or was it a semicolon? What have I got? Why did it find? I think actually it was fine. I don't think it needed a semicolon. I think it's just that there was nothing to find, right? There's nothing in the collection. So it calls this book collection is what the table would be, right? Kind of a table. So we use books, switch to DB books, book collection, find. Wish I could make this brighter. I wonder if I could. Going to do this. Is that better? Doesn't look that much difference.
That's the beginning, no.
Yeah, why is it off? All right, so let's go back. Just make it big this way. Mine is way brighter, but it's not any brighter on the screen. Anyway, I'm going to do db.books, book collection. And the problem with all of this is spelling for me. And I'm going to do .insert, and I'm going to do an open in parentheses. And then we're going to do a little bit of JSON. Why isn't it bright up here when it's so bright on my screen? Just didn't. I changed it to bold fonts, and it doesn't seem to make any difference on this display. Are you back?
Well, I finally got the thing to cancel the.
Oh. So
I download it again.
it should still be there. Just go to your download folder.
Well, it never actually. Oh.
So this right here, downloads, and then manga right there. Yeah. And then it should ask you for permission to do what it says.
Yeah.
Please.
Oh,
It should ask for permission, but it's just hanging. No.
There it is.
It doesn't seem to be like
I don't remember any of what I need to do to get to this.
All right, so go over here. Yeah. Go to this PC and see that.
Yeah, I think
Right click just down below. Edit folder. Data. And then inside the folder data, do new folder, right click new folder. DB. And right click below it and do new folder.
no, I think you're already.
And then just do command.
Oh, BD.
CMD. CD.
I need you to
Okay.
Press enter.
if you look for all the
And do CD
even from last.
program.
Yeah, so you guys-
Space. Program files. Backslash. Mongo. DB. Just program backslash server.
No, it's still. No, so
Backslash
this is
3.4.
4.
Backslash. Thing.
So you go all together.
Do Mongo
You know,
D.
CD space. It's all like that.
No,
Say
okay.
line.
Yeah. Okay, and then a new command. We'll get going on the font here in a moment. I'm going to see if I can make the fonts bigger. And you want the same path. So CD backslash. No, backslash first and then press enter. I have to go back to root. And then program files, CD program.
CD space.
Yeah, program files. That's 2 words. Okay, hold on. And then do MongoDB backslash server backslash 2.4 backslash center Mongo center no just Mongo and then use books and then DB book collections fine So I said, let me change this one more time. Is that better?
And now, was the semicolon necessary?
No, the semicolon's a screw up.
Okay, so how do I know that find did anything?
It does, it just returned nothing because there's nothing in the collection. Okay, are we ready? Sorta. I'm going to scroll down.
Do I need that first command prompt open? So
Yes, that first command prompt is the server itself. All right, so this is just a front, such as it is, this is a front end to the server. It is possible to build a front end. All right, there are a few that exist, but I'm going to do a curly brace, and I'm actually going to press enter because I'm going to break this up into a few lines. And so what we would want first is, what do we want, like the title? This is for books. I'm going to do it lowercase. Title. I'm going to do colon. What titles do you want here? Anybody have a good title?
Hobbit.
Hobbit?
This is looking at a copy of this one.
All right, and then you do a comma, and then you press enter again, and we can do author. And again, it could be lowercase or uppercase. One of the things that would be good is to be consistent. So I'll do JRR token. Can't type. And the other thing that's a real pain about this, all right, if you forget a comma, it's all going to fail. If you, there's nothing to keep you from typing garbage, so it's really easy to mess up. Things have to be just right. I'm going to show you a couple variations of this, though. Okay, so we got author. What else do we want? Let's not make it super complicated, but
Number of pages.
number of pages?
Yeah.
That varies a lot depending on what print edition it is.
Yes. So that's a good integer. Yeah.
Yeah.
ISBN.
What?
ISBN.
We could if we
You
had
just
to.
make one up.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
For what it's worth,
I don't know.
inside of JSON, everything is just a string.
Okay.
It doesn't distinguish between integers and other data types.
this is JSON.
Yes, it is. The part we're doing right here is JSON.
Okay, so just this insert.
Yeah, so the data is stored as JSON objects. So let's do ISBN. And I have no idea.
It's just probably good numbers.
What?
Just random numbers.
Just random numbers. Let's do like a genre. I'll do that as lowercase. Fantasy. It's interesting. I'm not real fond of sword and sorcery fantasies, but I like Tolkien. What else? Anything else, or do we want to close it at this point?
Yeah.
What year? When was, I actually don't remember, 1940 something, 1950 something?
Long time ago.
By the way, you capitalized
Year, yeah. And again, it would be good to be consistent. There's nothing that makes you be consistent. But if you're searching, if you're inconsistent, it won't pull things up.
Only pull up
Does
the
spacing matter?
lowercase years.
A little bit. The spacing for the colon doesn't matter much. Yeah. So I have no idea. It was like just after World War II.
1 second. The Hobbit.
Yeah, I think it's more like 48. But
That's what Google's for.
Come on.
1937.
Ooh.
was it 37?
Yes, that's what it says.
Always,
Yeah.
so it's after World. So the Lord of the Rings was released after World War II. All right, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the curly brace, close the parentheses.
There's no comma after the last one, right?
There shouldn't be no comma after the last one. And what I'm wondering here, before I commit this and fail, do I need a, where does the semicolon go? Maybe it doesn't need one. All right.
So you said JSON does not have a GUI, so this is the.
Well, I mean Mongo. So Mongo doesn't come with a GUI. You could write one if you want. I mean, you could create one in Python or something.
What exactly is Mongo?
Mongo is the database. JSON is JavaScript.
JSON is the language.
JSON is JavaScript here. We're using it instead of SQL, basically.
Yeah.
They store, so this is a JavaScript object. It actually isn't an object, it's a misnomer, but that's what they're called. Between these two curly braces.
Yeah, and I understand that. I recognize that.
And what most NoSQL databases store their data as JavaScript objects,
I'm
basically.
just wondering if this would be the standard usage of JSON. Like, would most people use that from the command line, or would they have it GUI?
So JSON is used a lot for like passing data between websites and databases. Typically, as far as I know, when you're writing JSON, it's almost always written as code and script. So I don't know of any GUIs for writing JSON. That doesn't mean there might not be something somewhere. But
Yeah.
so mine says that it inserted one, and that's good. Now if I do DB book collections, find, why did it not go? Did I spell, oh, because it's book collection.
Yes.
Yeah, DB book collection find,
There it is.
and it will return it. Actually, it didn't return it. What did it return?
Mine return.
Oh, I didn't do parentheses. See, why I really am not fond of.
Yeah.
Now it returned it. Not in the most readable, useful way, but it did return it. That didn't work. Never mind. I was trying to clear the screen. It is a DOS command, but it's not a Mongo command, and we're in Mongo. All right, so let's do another insert, and you don't have to worry about all the other garbage because that's my typos. I'm going to do db dot book collection insert again. All right, and start a parentheses, and then I'll do this. I don't know if I can move this up. Yeah, I can. Good. All right, I want to do it a little bit different.
And then you
No
can insert a
curly
curly
brace.
Well, I'll start a curly brace here. And then what I want to do is I'm going to do title. And again, where the colon is doesn't matter too much. I want a title with multiple authors.
Title of multiple what?
A book that has multiple authors.
The longer,
The what?
the longer, very bad with the younger one.
Okay, yeah, we could do that. Is that any good?
I like it.
Is it, Terry?
Yeah, but it's not like Cracker style. It's more like Gamer style.
So it's a longer,
The longer.
comma. And then I'm going to do author. And I'm going to do a colon, but I'm going to do square brackets, quotes, comma, is it 2 T's?
So,
Yeah.
So the square brackets there are essentially an array. You can just introduce an array out of nowhere. And it doesn't really matter if the records before it didn't have an array. You can just do it, right? And you can search. When you search for like Neil Gaiman, maybe we'll do another book by Neil Gaiman. It will find it even though it's in an array of objects.
JavaScript does love arrays.
What?
JavaScript does love arrays.
Yes. Well, and the thing is, this is a violation of normal forms in relational databases, right? But there's no normal forms. There's no schema, which means that there's no structure to these collections.
It's a free for all.
It's a free-for-all. And the only structure is what in your own capacity you maintain, right? And you should maintain some, because otherwise searches don't mean much, right? So, I mean, because this is a book collection, I'm going to assume that everything in here relates to books. The more consistent you are with the naming of the fields, the better your searches will be also. But you can do things like insert a list of authors. You can also embed other objects in here. Like if we did a book of short stories by different people, we could do story as a sub object inside of this object, and each story could have its own detail. I mean, you could do that. That's one of the things that's good about it, is that it's extremely flexible that way. But I'm just going to do a comma here. We did year, right?
ISBN.
We had
ISBN next. It, again, doesn't actually matter the order. So ISBN, I'm just going to, okay. What? Well, I just hit numbers randomly. And then it was year.
genre.
Oh, genre.
Oh, that's wrong.
Was it fantasy, I presume?
Yeah, but it's
Stephen
not Neil
Baxter.
Gaiman, it's Stephen Baxter.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Because Gaiman and Pratchett, the only book that I knew of was Bad Omens.
But it's like 2012.
How do I what? How do I add what? Oh, change it?
I don't think
I don't think you can.
ever.
Never ever touch it.
There is an update. Can I move this? No, I don't think I can fix it.
Forever.
So year was 19 or 20. It was 20 something, 2012. And the quotes are a little bit variable too. So I'm going to close this and close.
So you don't need a comma for the last line.
No, not for the last line. In fact, it'll throw an error if we do.
I did it on my first one.
It didn't throw an error. So this one did it. And if I do DB book collection, we don't have to do this every time, but so we have 2 books in here. I'm going to enter one more so I can do a simple query. And we might as well do one for Neil Gaiman. Even though he didn't write this book, we can attribute it to him for a while. Actually, I was excited to, so the American Gods is coming out on TV pretty soon. And he just got a TV contract to do Sandman. Maybe nobody else cares, but I like that. All right, so I am going to show you another thing that we can do real quickly. I'm going to do DB collection, what is it, book collection?
Yes.
Insert. And what we'll do is we'll insert a couple of books. So I'm going to do a parentheses. And then let me move this up because it will let me do that. I'm going to do a square bracket. And then I'm going to do the, so basically I'm going to make an array of books. And we'll do a couple of books here. So square bracket, and I did a curly brace. They could be on separate lines. The line breaks actually don't matter here. And I'm going to do, so title, let's do Neverwhere. There's also a new Neverwhere novel coming out. Should put that in quotes.
Can they just be in the same line?
They can be on the same line as long as they're separated by commas. Did I spell Neil Gaiman right last time? Yeah. Okay. So where did we go next? We went author, genre. Oh, ISBN. And again, I have no idea. Looks good. So then genre. We seem to be heavy on the fantasy here.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's the best part.
Year, I have no idea. Well, actually, so I know that there's a revised, actually it's the original version. The author's preferred version came out in 2015. Okay, so that's good enough for that. So I'm going to close that one and put a comma here. And then I'm going to do a second book. And so I'll do another curly brace. Title. Anybody have a title? Something?
Deadbeat.
What?
Deadbeat.
Sure. Who's that by?
A gym butcher.
Oh, yeah. I know Jim Butcher. I like his stuff. I've even read Deadbeat. I knew it sounded familiar.
It's the 6th book of the series, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot. I've read all of the Dresden books, but it's been a while.
Do you remember the ISBN for that book?
That would be something if you did remember that ISBN.
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose there are some kind of savants or something somewhere that could remember ISBNs.
Definitely, there's some that I can remember. It's always
So is it genre again? All fantasy still. And I have no idea what the year was.
Around 2008.
Oh. Oh.
There should be another one in that series out soon. Although I know he's writing punk.
He had to wait a long time just for the next one because he wrote that
The
steampunk.
steampunk stuff, yes, I know. I haven't read it yet.
None of my friends have either, and we all keep waiting for someone else to jump first. to
Yeah.
read it.
So then I do a square bracket again and then a parentheses. And I do know when I've done this and playing with it before, I mean, it's really easy to get messed up on curly braces and square brackets and parentheses. So we start with a square bracket here because it is, we're making an array, right? Now, one of the things you can do, I'm not doing it here, but you can write all this stuff in Notepad if it's easier for you, and it is possible to cut and paste into here. So, I mean, you could do all of this, edit it, which you can't edit here, you get back out. You can do a lot better, do it in Notepad. But starts an array. This is one book, comma separates it just like everything else, and then a second book in the array. And then, so you end the book, in the array, and then in that. If we're lucky, that'll insert 2. I'm going to press enter. And now I have error. No, I don't have any errors. I don't have any errors.
I had errors, but I didn't. Yeah.
Right errors.
Ah,
Is it
not the cover.
is it a problem if you try to put the parentheses, square, and curly brace on the same line?
Shouldn't matter.
Is it
They do have to be in the right order. I guess that's the.
parentheses, square, curly, right?
That actually looks like it went.
It said this stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's fine.
Oh, it's supposed to say that.
Yeah, notice it says there's no number in the right errors.
Oh, okay.
The number inserted is 2.
I see. I was confused by the syntax.
Yeah, I know. It confused me when I first saw it too. I was thinking, oh, that's not an error. But there's no number in the right errors. And because we're sending in an array, it's possible that some would write and some wouldn't, which is why I think the right errors would come through. So if we do, just real quickly, I'm going to do DB book collection find, and we have those books. And then I'm going to try to do a query to show you how you would do a query. We'll look for Neil Gaiman because we got 2 books, one falsely attributed. But
Could you scroll down a little bit so that your code pops up further above your head?
which one? This one?
Yeah, just go down. Yeah, there you go. Just so we can.
Yeah, that's fine. And notice, well, it's not wrapping perfectly. Not sure why that is. So I'm going to search just for the author equals Neil Gaiman. So I'm going to do DB book collection find. But this time I'm not going to do empty parentheses. I am going to do a curly brace. And I'm going to do author colon Neil Gaiman. And then I will close the that and close the
This is where your naming convention really matters.
yeah, it does. And notice it did. It pulled out the 2 Neil Gaiman ones.
Supposed.
So what we do for the criteria is I said find author colon Neil Gaiman. So it was looking for the field author, and it was looking for matches. But notice that it found the match even though one of them is in an array. So it found both instances even though one was in an array. The query itself is JSON, right? It's a value pair, key value pair. And it's really hard to see because of the way this does. The query is here. I'm going to change it a little bit. What if we only want to see, notice this other thing, it has an object ID. This is because we did not give it an ID, it generates one. But it generates a really big ID. Relational, non-relational databases like Mongo, there's no relations between tables. There's no such thing as joins. However, you can refer to something's key, but you have to do not a single query where you join it, but you do a second query where you look for that key. Does that make sense? There's no actual joining. There's no actual relationship going on. I'm going to do one more query, and I think we might call it, and then I'll just talk a little bit about what we'll do next. This is just to show you what NoSQL looks like and what and again, you can do a lot of this. You could do it through programs, through web pages, things where you're not doing it all command line. And in fact, NoSQL, a lot of it is gathering. You have a little program where you're gathering Facebook info or something, or LinkedIn info or something, where it's just feeding it automatically into your database. It's JSON. So I'm not sure how often you would be doing it this manually.
Oh, you have to look
The next steps after this, we will talk about the database that's in the assignment and how you would even think about structuring something really, like that. So in the assignment, the database is basically shows around town. So music shows, different venues, where are they playing, who's playing, what's the information about the different shows. And I chose that as a topic because you could make a relational database out of it, I have, but it actually seems to fit this kind of database better, where you could be a little bit flexible in what you enter about each show. It could have different information. Does that make sense? And it's stuff that, I think it would make a good non-SQL database. So we'll look at that. I'm going to do one more query. You can do a lot of, obviously I'm not doing really sophisticated queries. You can do really sophisticated queries. You can do a lot of aggregate and summary and type of stuff. Otherwise, what would the point be, I guess? What I'm going to do is I'm going to try just to return the titles. Oh, yes, thank you. When I do this at home, I have lots of bad, errors in between things. So I'm going to, again, do, first I'm going to author. We'll do the Neil Gaiman again. And then I'm going to close that, and I'm going to do a parentheses. And I'm going to, I think it's author. And I'm going to say, I might have to look at this. What I wanted to do is exclude the object ID. I'm not sure this will work. I may have to look at the syntax error. After ID.
Is it a colon?
Did I leave out a colon?
No, I didn't think you did.
Use
Oh, yeah, it should be a colon now. Let's try that real quickly. I did an equal here.
That's supposed to be
Yeah, colon. And it might be ID equals no. So I'll try it one more time.
Does it matter that you did the I uppercase and D lowercase?
I think that's the way it is, isn't it?
I don't know.
When you look in the fields.
Yeah, you're right.
You're missing the space there.
Yeah, between Gaiman and Neil and Gaiman.
Oh, yes. Can I get back? I guess I can do it this way.
Yeah, it works with this semicolon.
No, I don't want author, yes. I want title, yes.
Oh, I was later.
Yeah, I thought it was this line here was.
Oh, he has colon, not semicolon.
Where do I have a semicolon? Yeah, it should be a colon.
Oh, sorry, I misused the word.
There, that's, oh, except I got the ID.
In my head, I knew I was talking about a colon.
Notice I only got the title, but I still got the ID, and I know why.
Oh.
I should call it underscore ID.
So I didn't get a title, I only got the author.
That's because I originally said author.
Oh, yeah.
DB,
It's underscore.
yeah, so book collection, find. Don't you love typing things over and over again? So author, colon, Neil.
No, that is too bad.
Oh, shoot, I gotta get the quotes in there at the beginning. Close that, comma. So in the second set, you're saying what you want to see. So I say I want to see title. Yes, I want to see that, comma, underscore ID,
Oh, it used to be in
Colon.
It used to be in
it should be in quotes, I think.
yeah, because without quotes.
Well, I still got it.
Oh,
I should be able to exclude.
is yes a reserved word then?
It must be. Oh, you know why I bet it did it? I'm going to try.
I'm just pressing that arrow and bring it up to it.
It didn't. No, it didn't make a difference. I have in my blog how to block the object ID. But I did get just the title. I got the object ID too, but I did get the title. Because sometimes you don't want to see everything, so you can select fields.
Yes, actually, I did it. So now I see. And we were having these
So one of the things that I want to show, so there are the several blog entries here. A couple of things about them are they start off with going into some Mongo. So Mongo Database 2 is probably good. I added a lot of stuff there. Did some updates and stuff if you want to look at some of these, and did some calculations and aggregations. 3, I started writing some Python. You guys don't have to do that. But I wrote some Python on that. And I did some more Python. And I think the last one with the Mongo has, I did actually create a little bit of a form. I think I have a picture of it on at the end. I created a form where you could enter data into, basically just let you enter data with writing it like this rather than writing the JSON. So there's that stuff there if you want to look at it. You don't have to look at all the Python. We next time talk how to approach the assignment, talk about what parts you'd want to do. I mean, basically it's just to create this little database, and we'll try to test it with a little bit of data. What else? There's something else I was going to tell you. Oh, I know. If I go back to the first steps of NoSQL, towards the bottom here, or looks like it's in the middle, the Mongo manual, I'm going to just click on that, is really excellent. So this is the Mongo manual where it goes through and it gives you all of the commands and all of the different things there, and it's really pretty easy to search for things. So if you need to find something, one of the things I might show you is how to do a full text index. That way you can search for individual words within a text. There are things on aggregation, and the examples are usually quite good. So I just want to say the manual is fairly readable. The aggregation one's a bit complicated, but the Mongo shell talks about how to use the Mongo shell that we're using. So like DB collection insert, DB collection find, a lot of those. I think I'm, now to get out of this, is it quit? Yeah, quit, and then you can do exit. No, yeah, actually it's exit to quit. And then I think it's exit again. This one you just kill it. So that was just meant to be an introduction. We'll play with it more next time. And it was running, so there should be a video on that.